Hi, everyone. So I'd like to welcome you all, and we will start out with discussing the fact that NexInfo is our company that we work for. And NexInfo is a consulting company for both small and large companies across a diverse range of industries. We are a global company with the ability to support US or Europe. They opened in 1999, and we have a we have been an industry leader, for 23 years with a wealth of knowledge and experience in software consulting services. For examples, we have business process design, software implementation, SaaS solutions, and business analytics. Our domain expertise is across all of the Oracle products. We are a certified Oracle partner and have partnerships with several other organizations. NexInfo has been recognized by many firms, but most recently by Yahoo Finance. So Raul, would you please introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Don. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the part of the world. So as Don introduced, my name is Rahul Phatak, and I'm the Oracle ERP and Cloud Practice Lead here at NexInfo. I have 20 plus years of industry experience, especially in business transformation projects, program and change management, as well as I've done a lot of solution design. I have extensive experience with various ERP systems, and a domain of expertise is finance and supply chain, as well as I'm very well versed with HCM or human capital management. So I'm Oracle certified, and as I said, I've done a lot of ERP transfer engagements, I've done a lot of EBS upgrade project, recommended industry best practices, done a lot of ERP assessments and optimization initiatives across enterprise customers across multiple industry domains. So now, Don, can you please introduce yourself? And before I say that, I would like to take my webcam off just to save bandwidth. Don?
Sure. Thanks, Raul. And I apologize. I'm having trouble with my webcam, so you have a pretty picture on my introduction. And as stated previously, my name is Don Baker. I am a senior analyst and project manager for NexInfo. I have 25 years of manufacturing experience, which 19 of that is utilizing Oracle applications. I've implemented at 15 different companies and done a couple of upgrades, as well as been in your shoes at a couple of companies as an end user. The companies varied in size from large global corporations to mom and pop shop private companies. I have utilized supply chain planning and managed projects while applying change management in order to adhere to company compliance and audit requirements. So now let's cover the agenda. And we will be presenting a customer case study, the challenges that customer experienced, as well as how those challenges were addressed utilizing supply chain orchestration. We'll review some of the complex fulfillment processes, discuss some of the advanced fulfillment techniques that can be applied, provide a supply chain orchestration overview, how supply chain orchestration can automate your change management processing, review some of the advanced fulfillment process flows that can be applied and tracked utilizing supply chain orchestration, and show some of the tracking capabilities supply chain orchestration can provide. Then we'll summarize what we've covered, have a next step option for you, and of course a Q&A. So I'm sure that everyone is aware or has felt the impact of the supply chain crisis. The existing supply chain environment presents challenges across the board for order promising and fulfillment. These are some of the emails published in response to order backlogs and the inability to meet demands. And a specific quote I'd like to point out is the Adidas CEO, Kasper Rosted, openly said, "We will be unable to meet the strong demand in the second half of the year due to shutdowns, despite switching production to other regions." So this disruption, I'm sure in the world where supply was plenty, we could rely on established ways to fulfill the supplies. Shipments adhere to service level agreements. When there are shortages, supply organizations are trying to balance the supply to the demand, while becoming nimble to match the dynamic changes. A lot more effort is required to understand the impacts and changes to the supply schedules every day with the increasing fulfillment complexities. So the challenges addressed by supply chain orchestration. Some of these challenges can be addressed by creating automated supply chain orchestration rules that incorporate change management to keep supply and demand in balance, define organization business rules in order to leverage all supply channels options available to make the appropriate selection for the fastest delivery times. Supply chain orchestration allows the seamless management of supply requests from external and internal sources, forecast the supply shortages and identify supply in jeopardy in order to react quicker. Supply chain orchestration can eliminate the siloed operations and the lack of supply visibility from various supply sources, including contract manufacturers, providing the ability to view some key performance indicators, metrics, and actionable drill down functionality from the dashboards. So now let's take a look at the customer case study. Roll, can you step us through that case study, please?
Yes, thanks, Don. Absolutely well. So this is the classic case study where supply chain orchestration fulfilled the needs of a biotech company. A brief background about the customer. So this biotech manufacturer is headquartered in the US in California and has over 50 sales and distribution and manufacturing facilities. They are a global company spread across 10 countries. They have a diverse line of products with highest degree of quality and engineering, as the biotech company should be. And so they had a whole suite of Oracle Fusion Cloud implemented, including order management, inventory planning, manufacturing, financials, procurement, and EPM as well. So let's take a look at some of the challenges they faced. So being a biotech company, they had a complex manufacturing process. So they had to manage supply from various modes. So they had some dropship suppliers. They also used contract manufacturing to make some specialized items. They used to often do make to stock, and they also did internal stock movements wherein they moved items from various regions depending on the source of shipment. And again, because being a regulated company, they had a very low appetite for risk in supply due to all the expensive raw material and the components they use in the manufacturing process. Another requirement was they want to have very controlled inventory with tightly coupled with demand and supply. Last but not the least, they always wanted a visibility and integration with the contract manufacturer to get the latest supply picture and to see the progress and trends at their facility. So that was a brief overview of the company. Now let's take a look at their order to cash processes or the fulfillment processes. So going from left to right, they received orders from various sources, including EDI, XML, and other flat file sources. So all these orders landed into the order management of the Oracle Fusion Cloud, as well as they had manual orders being entered by their sales reps and account managers. As soon as the orders were entered, it turned on to GOP to get the scheduling, especially the supply date and the ship date. Once that was done, it was passed on to supply chain orchestration to orchestrate the supply for that order. Supply chain orchestration, as you see, sits here, and then it gets input from the order management to create a supply request, as well as it interacted with planning. In their case, they are still in Planning Central, and then they also do some inventory min-max plan, but I have not notified that here. But then this SCO used to get all the input from all these various sources and create a supply request. Now, depending on the classic or set of business rules, what the SCO does to fulfill this particular order, depending on the rule, it would create supply using either a contract manufacturer, or they could supply from their own warehouse, or an internal order transfer, depending on the shipping location. And then sometimes if it was like a service product, they also called the external supplier to directly ship the products. Once the supply was created by the SCO and the supply came in, it was sent into the inventory to pick, pack, and ship and fulfill the order. Once the order was shipped, the invoice data, as everybody knows, goes to the financial clouds for the receivables and collection process. And also, as I said, they are a multinational company, so they had a lot of compliance and reporting to do along with their financial process. So that was the overview of the other process where the SEO served as a main driver to orchestrate the supply. So now let's take a look at some of the typical fulfillment complexities faced by this high-end organization or these high-tech organizations. So in today's competitive world, there's cutthroat competition in terms of meeting customer requests. So reducing cost and delivery times is always the key to success. So you may always want to expand your channels, meaning even if the customer doesn't store the inventory, you may want to give the flexibility to your customers to order items, and internally it can be fulfilled by one of these techniques such as drop shipment, contract manufacturing, back-to-back, etc. So this is the rationale behind all these new approaches. And the main challenges it solves is cost efficiency, system efficiency, and speed of service. As you can see from this diagram, it illustrates the need for suppliers to use multiple methods for communicating and getting their products to the customer. That include dropship functionality, which is this one, back-to-back, which includes suppliers and procurement activity, or utilizing work orders for manufacturing, which could either be your internal manufacturing in your distribution centers or your outsourced factories. So these challenges are addressed by the SCO. So now let's take a look where the supply chain orchestration falls in the whole gamut of order to cash process. So Dawn, can you please walk us through that?
Sure, thanks, Raul. So by utilizing the fulfillment techniques to optimize your fulfillment across all channels allows the maximization of customer service and revenue. This includes capturing orders through order management or import functionalities, optionally configuring products utilizing Oracle Configurator, and utilizing a robust pricing functionality to price orders meeting the organization's revenue goals. Integrating with global order promising and planning so that orders can be promised and scheduled. Within order management, orchestration executes the steps to fulfill all of the lines of orders, and then finally integrate with the financial system, generating the bills and collecting the revenue. Completed through various life cycles of the sales order, including capturing, promising, and fulfillment. This would utilize Oracle Cloud applications of order management, global order promising, supply chain orchestration, and also integrates with manufacturing, procurement, inventory seamlessly. So now let's take a look at some of the advanced techniques supported by supply chain orchestration. So you have the back-to-back supply creation. You can do drop shipments, internal material transfers, consigned inventory, contract manufacturing, outside processing, and process manufacturing. So let's take a deeper dive into the advanced fulfillment techniques supported by supply chain orchestration. And Raul, can you take that, please?
Thanks, Don. Yes. So I'm going to start with a few advanced processes. So let's first take a look at back-to-back and what does that mean. So if you can see, this is a simple overview of back-to-back process. So in the diagram, we start with your customer providing you an order, which is entered into your order management system. Then submitting and booking their order will launch a predefined process. So in this case, the demand could be fulfilled either by your external supplier, our internal factory, or manufacturing and then inventory from distribution centers and so on. So during that back-to-back process, the system will automatically create and reserve the supply. That way, when we receive the product, we don't risk losing that product to any other orders created afterward or any other competing demands. Once we take the physical receipt of the product, then it instantly matches that receipt to the reservation against the sales order, allowing shipment to our customer to complete the fulfillment. Next, let's take a look at drop shipment and what that means. The drop shipment process is a process in an order fulfillment strategy where the seller does not keep products for inventory, but instead relies on suppliers or contract manufacturers to build, store, and ship orders directly to the customers. When the customer places an order that is designated as a dropship product, the seller immediately issues a purchase order for the item and provides instructions for shipping directly to the customer. The supplier or the contract manager, whoever that be, can then ship the product, and then the sellers in turn can earn their profits. Let's take a look at internal material transfer overview. As the name suggests, this process is used to move the goods internally. As an example, we may have like a sales order which is placed, but our local warehouse is out of product, or we have certain rules saying that if this customer comes, we have to ship from this warehouse. So in those cases, we may have product located elsewhere in a different region, where we first need to transfer the product from that DC or distribution center to your local warehouse. Once we receive that product, we can then ship it out to our customer directly from our local warehouse. This particular flow typically is great for intra-organization, inter-organizations, and intercompany transfers. Again, this internal material transfer flow fully supports now the new concept called project-driven supply chain. Next, let's take a look how the financial ownership is managed using the internal movements. As you see, the diagram depicts a financial orchestration which supports complex global structures without compromising on the supply chain efficiency. The main goal of that, to separate the physical flow from the financial flow, and allows you to model and execute both independently of each other. Let's walk through an example. This is our flow. Our shipment is originating from China and going to the US. However, in our scenario, we have an Asian headquarters in Singapore, which requires that all the sales and purchases would go through Singapore. So in this case, you would have two ownership transfers from China to Singapore and Singapore to the US. What would you need is orders, invoices, and payments to back up this type of sale. We also need to make sure that they are in accordance with the transfer pricing rules and other agreements you have in place with the governments or the jurisdictions where you are operating. This also requires a system that can model these agreements and automate the execution of the whole process, including the supply chain as well as the financial orchestration. So the supply chain orchestration and advanced fulfillment techniques, along with financial orchestration, allow you to do this all seamlessly. Next, a little bit overview on the concerned inventory. As the diagram depicts, the concerned inventory process flow is initiated when a consignment agreement is established between a buyer and a supplier. The consignment agreement typically stipulates a term of consignment relationship between the buyer and the supplier. The consigned inventory is ordered from the supplier through a consignment order and then is received in the organization in the same manner as you would receive non-consigned inventory. But the main difference is change in ownership actually occurs when the buyer uses the product. For example, it can issue the product to manufacturing or can sell the product directly to the customer. Or you can have predefined period of time, for example, 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, where the ownership automatically changes. So this time period, typically if you set it up, is often referred to as the inventory aging period. Then comes the consumption advice, which is used to report consigned inventory usage to the supplier on a periodic basis, such as daily or weekly. Supplier, once they see consumption, will send buyer an invoice for the consigned inventory, which has been already used. When the invoice is received from the supplier, it will be validated and the payment will be sent to the supplier. Next, take a look at the contract manufacturing overview. So, I mean, the supply chain orchestration delivers a contract manufacturing process, so which is fully integrated manufacturing process It can support make to stock or make to order process. It allows complete visibility into your partner's operation, which in this case is a contract manufacturer. It can plan and supply components to the contract manufacturer, and also you can ship directly from the contract manufacturer. So as you can see in this flow, the customer places an order, which is into order management. Once we release and book the sales order, it will become a supply order to create the supply. This will automatically launch the appropriate process through the contract manufacturing, and in this case, it can either directly create a work order to the manufacturing system or create a PO communicated to contract manufacturer and into their system. Ultimately, once the product has been produced, the contract manufacturer will ship directly to the customer and internally will integrate electronic transaction so that our sales order can go ahead and complete a cycle, including creating invoices in the billing process. So let's take a look, an overview of SCO and what it does. So the diagram depicts that the supply chain orchestration, or SCO, as the way it's called it for short, the acronym, is designed to execute and manage complex cross-product business processes, such as internal material transfers, which we covered back-to-back, and contract manufacturing. The supply chain orchestration provides the ability to do the following. It receives supply requests from several Oracle Cloud systems, such as Supply Planning Cloud, Planning Central, and Min-Max Planning, and then also Global Order Promising. For demand-specific requests, such as back-to-back, SCO combines the demand from the order management and the supply suggestions from Global Promising to create a supply order. It creates supply document and also launches and manages complex business processes to create supply in the warehouse that will fill the anticipated demands. It also performs automated change management to match the supply to the demand to ensure that the quantity and the fulfillment dates are automatically balanced. Next, in demand-specific supply creation, the enterprise goal is always not to carry any excess supply or fall short on filling the orders. So always balancing the supply with demand on an order-by-order basis is always important for customer satisfaction and for profitability. The automated exception management capability of SCO supports these goals while providing a 360-degree view of the supply creation process as well as the relationship between various documents of a flow. So now let's go a little bit deeper into the functional overview of SCO and what are these main components. So as you can see, going from left to right, so the first is a supply request. This is basically the SCO interface which receives the standard and contract manufacturing data from planning and inventory functionality. It also reflects back-to-back supply and demand information from GOP and order management. When the SCO, the request is received, it then turned on to the decomposition layer. Now, the decomposition layer uses Oracle Business Rules, or OBR as it's called, to decompose these lines that are being received from the SCO interface. These rules will transform, enrich, and execute so that they can create a format that can be read by the order management and other supply execution systems. What it also does, it also evokes a predefined orchestration process to create a supply. The orchestration process flow is like a workflow. It takes care of orchestrating or executing the tasks on the fulfillment lines of the sales order. So it can do tasks such as making calls, it can schedule, it can reserve, it can receive, it can manage changes, it can note exceptions, and so on. So the orchestration process then executes a predefined process to create the supply. Then it turns over to the orchestration again. For example, the process we call the manufacturing system to create a manufacturing work order, or to a purchasing system to create or change the quantity on a PO. These same functions are also executed out to fulfillment system to something called as task clearer, which is an extension of the orchestration process definition. Then come the business services. The main goal of them these are invoked to send and receive messages from the execution systems. And the supply execution systems, they are the end systems ultimately responsible for creating the actual supply, which can be your purchasing, inventory, or your manufacturing modules. Having looked at the functional overview, let's go a little bit more deeper on these processes which create the supply. Dawn, can you please walk us through them?
Sure. Thanks, Raul. So Raul just stepped you through the supply chain orchestration functional overview. And this image here provides you with the system sending a request to supply chain orchestration to create the supply. The requesting systems, Planning Central, that releases a request for the batched order or the planned batch order to supply chain orchestration. A batch can include standard make, buy, or transfers, including make orders for inventory organizations designated as contract manufacturers. Global order promising and order management demand data for back-to-back orders scheduled by order management, processed by global order promising that sends the supply data to supply chain orchestration when a back-to-back order is scheduled by order management. The demand data is sent to supply chain orchestration, matching the data received from global order promising and order management, and treats them as one to launch a back-to-back process. Inventory, mid-max planning, or manual spreadsheet uploads can result in a make, buy, or transfer request sent to supply chain orchestration as well. So now the overview for determining the supply process. This would be the part of the decomposition and the orchestration from the supply chain orchestration functional overview that was covered by Raul. And so once supply chain orchestration receives the request, it prepares the request to create supply. The preparation step involves attribute mapping. The attributes specific to the requesting system are mapped and transformed to the execution system attributes. For an example, a supplier number from Planning Central is transformed to a procurement system supplier ID. The execution rules are defined by the governing business rules on how the supply should be met for the demand. For example, the system can create a transfer or a purchase order, and to go deeper, a transfer order could further be routed as a standard order via order management or an internal transfer. So this step is part of the business services and the supply execution from supply chain orchestration functional overview. So once the determination has been made from the creating supply chain orchestration executes the supply creation process steps. After a predefined supply creation or an orchestration process is selected and launched, the process steps are executed. So an example of that would be the back-to-back process, including the following steps. The application calls the procurement system to create a purchase order. The inventory system reserves the purchase order against the demand. The supply would be received in the warehouse. So the orchestration execution process also includes process planning. At launch, the overall process schedule is calculated based on the duration of each task, driving the start and end dates of each process, kind of similar to Microsoft projects. Change management: in case of changes in supplier demand, the change management system responds and makes adjustments to keep supply and demand in balance based on predefined rules. And throughout the entire process, tracking of the status and the state of the execution document. So this step would be part of the supply execution from the supply chain orchestration functional overview. And last, we see how the supply chain system interacts with the execution system. The predefined supply creation or orchestration process interacts with the execution system to create and manage supply. Updates from the execution execution systems such as purchase status changes or quantity changes are received and passed to the orchestration system for change management. So now, Raul, can you provide more details on the flows implemented utilizing supply chain orchestration?
Sure, Don. Thanks. So let's take a look at a few sample business processes or flows, which are advanced fulfillment process flows and which are implemented using the SCO. So we were able to start with the make to stock contract manufacturing process and the back-to-back process. So we know that the supply chain orchestration provides predefined business processes such as contract manufacturing, internal material transfer, back-to-back fulfillment. In addition, all the planned orders from the SCM Cloud, from Planning Central or Supply Chain Planning Cloud are routed through SCO to create a document creation for the supply. So now let's take a look at the contract manufacturing. So we have two models, basically make to stock, typically generated by the planning systems, and back-to-back process typically generated by sales order, or also they can be created by planning systems. So now let's take a look at a make to stock contract manufacturing process. It starts with creating a paired work order and a purchase order. The work order tracks the progress of supply in the contract's manufacturing plan, and the purchase order serves as a contractual agreement between the enterprise and the manufacturing plant. The documents, which are the purchase order and work order, are always linked to ensure that their parameters and progress are automatically synchronized. This synchronization is facilitated by the supply chain orchestration process. In case of back-to-back procurement process, a PO is created for the contract manufacturer to create supply and then receive that supply in our warehouse. Once the supply is received, the customer's orders is fulfilled. Supply chain orchestration provides an end-to-end process that I'll be explaining that in the next slide. So this is a process flow of the back-to-back procurement process. Supply chain orchestration receive the supply request from order management and order promising application, which is nothing but GOP. The two requests are combined to create an entity called supply chain orchestration supply orders, which is used to manage the entire process of creating the supply and delivering it. The back-to-back process is then triggered and assigned and then launched. The process sends a request to the purchasing system to create a PR and a PO if the rules are set up like that. Once the PO is created, the SCO also sends a request to the inventory management system to receive the supply, to reserve the supply against that PO. Once the supply is received from the contract manufacturer or the external supplier, whoever it might be, then the order is picked, packed, and shipped and fulfilled to the customer. So this was an overview of back-to-back procurement process. So the main goal of that would be to create supply as per multiple predefined processes. So this picture shows how SCO can enable enterprises to expand their product offerings by sourcing the product using contract manufacturers or an outside process or outside suppliers. The key here is often the business rules. So you can set sophisticated business rules to trigger the make to stock or back-to-back procurement process. We see that the supply chain orchestration enables users to assign each supply request to the mode of supply creation, which is optimal for that enterprise. So depending on one of these two scenarios. For example, the enterprise can reduce cost and extend their offerings by engaging contract manufacturers with specialized capabilities for specific items. When the supply for a specific item is required, the supply creation request is always routed to a suitable contract manufacturer. So herein we can have rules saying, hey, the item is this, routed to this CM. Item is this, routed to this CM. So we can set up further rules like that. So what it always does is this liberates an enterprise from having to spend capital or building manufacturing plants or often stocking the inventory which they don't want to stock. Now let's take a look at automated change management process facilitated by the supply chain orchestration. So the main goal, as you can see from this picture, is always balance supply to meet its demand and occasionally change supplies when demand changes as well. So what it does, the main goal is to prevent excess inventory buildup by matching supply to demand, hence reducing cost by automatic change management to manage all the exceptions. And then it just reduces the errors associated with the manual manipulation if those processes were not in place. So in organizations where changes are very common and require manual intervention, the possibilities of errors and delays can prove to be bottlenecks in a flawless order fulfillment process. The automatic change management or SCM capabilities circumvents the need for the manual intervention, except you need to address some of the exceptions, and also it precludes the delays that can occur because of human intervention. So now let's see what are the supported automated change management processes. So it is available on both the demand and supply sides. A comprehensive set of automated change management rules are designed to address the changes. The supply side change scenarios are like this: an increase or decrease in the supply quantity, or supply order cancellation, that is the supply quantity received to 0. Changes in the date on which supply becomes available or split in supply, which is the total quantity will become available in more than one delivery. The response to the supply side changes depends on the type and change of the business process. I'll provide an example in the next slide. The automated change management is also available for the following demand side change scenarios: cancellation of demand, increase or decrease in demand quantity, or change in the need by dates by the customer. In case of the demand side changes, the change management systems attempts to alter the supply to match the demand. If the supply cannot be changed to satisfy the new conditions, then an exception occurs, which it notifies the fulfillment systems. In this case, it could be your order management system. So in the next slide, as I said, we're going to take a look at an example. So here's an example of automated change management. So demand was for 100 quantity, the PO was for 100 quantity, and then the supplier reduced to 75. So the automated change management system attempts to create the supply to fill the gap for the reduction of 25 units. If the supply cannot be cleared in time, an exception is raised in the order management system. That is the order scheduling system we have for now. The exception then needs to be addressed by the order fulfillment manager. The other scenario can be where the demand drops from, let's say, 100 to 50, and such changes are not handled on the supply side. The result would have been suboptimal and with excess inventory being supplied by the vendor. The SCO ensures the supply documents are automatically updated to reflect the new demand. Next, we are going to see what are the supply orders. And this is the main working area in the supply chain orchestration. So there are 4 distinct tabs. The first is the overview, then the managed supply lines, supply order details, and the linked execution documents. On the overview, you typically see the summary of supply lines and their statuses. The managed supply lines is used to view the line errors and messages to mark the line as either inactive or you can submit them for reprocessing. Supply order details is used to view the supply order structure and the progress of the orchestration process. The execution documents actually navigate to the work order, PO, or the transfer order, which might the case be for the associated supply line. Next, we are going to see a screenshot for the supply lines overview or the supply chain orchestration work area. This is typically a landing page for the supply chain orchestration users. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this page. And I'm going to zoom it a little bit so that you guys can see it better. So as you can see, this page displays an aggregated summaries, right? So there are 3 or 4 distinct columns for the state. The first being the errors. This refers to the instances where a technical or functional error prevented the completion of a transaction. This can be a system error or it can also be a process error where the creation of the reservation failed. Except then comes the exceptions. So this is referred to instances where the changes in supply caused it to be mismatched to demand. For example, if demand quantity is 100 and the supply gets reduced to 80, as we saw in the previous example, but the change management fails to compensate for the change in supply, it would throw an exception. Next column shows the jeopardy lines. This refers to the instances where the supply is potentially delayed beyond its need by date. And last column would be on track. This is simply where the number of lines or supply lines have no reported issues. All these numbers are all actionable, and if you click on one of these, it will take you actually to the impacted supply line, and you can see more details on it. So now let's come to a little bit left. The supply lines are grouped by the parameters that are helpful for users who will be troubleshooting these exceptions. So these are grouped and aggregated by the following parameters. First is the supply type. This means the total supply creation, such as a make, buy, transfer, or available to promise. Also, the source will be, the next column will be your sources supply, which can either be buy, where a source is supply, which you see in this case, transfer, where the source is a warehouse, or make an ATP, where the destination and the source warehouses are the same. Then the destination parameter would be the warehouse for which supply is going to deliver to fulfill your customer's order. And lastly, the item is the item for which we are creating the supply. If you scroll a little bit below, you see these actionable analytics or dashboards, and you can, for example, this one shows a deviation by supply type. So first is jeopardy, second is errors. It shows the status by supply type, and these again are configurable, and you can configure to your business needs. And last but not least, these are all actionable. So if I click on this bar chart, it is going to take me to those supply lines where they are impacted, and you can see more details on that. Next, let's say example, I clicked on the jeopardy line from the previous screen. So this will bring me into the jeopardy line screen. Let me zoom it a little bit so that you can see it better. The managed supply line now opens so that we can see all the details. Note on top, you can actually search for the specific lines using different criteria like document number, supply type, statuses, date ranges, and so on. Now let's take a look of some of these columns in the search results. The message type shows if it's an error, exception, or jeopardy. In this case, all the items we have in this case fall under jeopardy, which means the supply is at risk. It can also display a message if you have coded that in the system. Again, these messages are user configurable, and you can code the messages based on your organization's needs or your business rules. Then you have a supply order number. This is the order number for which the supply is being created. Then also it shows the line number for the supply orders. Then you see this document number. This will be the existing documents like work orders, purchase orders, or transfers once they are attached to the supply line. The supply type, as I said earlier, indicates whether the supply is either of make, buy, or transfer source. The request source shows you the system that actually created the supply request or initial supply request. The line status will display the current state of the supply line. From this UI, the users also have some options. For example, they can click on the line and they can highlight it, and they can mark that line as inactive. They could mark the line as inactive when they are not interested in further creating supply, or the demand for that supply line has vanished. Or if there were any exceptions earlier and now the supply is available, they can click on the line and use the resubmit button to reprocess the line so that the supply can be matched to the demand. So now let's go a little bit more detail on the supply lines. So this screen will come up when you click on supply order and click on an individual line. So as you can see from the screen, I'm going to zoom here as well a little bit. So this is the structure of our supply lines. The first line, which is 1, represents a specific structure. It shows the request was received by supply chain orchestration from a requesting source. The secondary lines, which are all line 1.1 and 1.2, represent the actual supplies that are created to fulfill this request. Technically, the first degree lines are called the supply lines, and the second degree lines, which is 1.1 and 1.2, are called supply tracking lines. Note, we also have a quantity for the requested quantity that is required on order line. The fulfilled quantity, which shows the quantity of supply that's been created by the supply line and made available for the sales order fulfillment from that destination warehouse. If we go a little bit down, we see that our purchase order and the requisition have a referencer and include a hyperlink for the PO. We can view the details of the PO by clicking on the hyperlink, and this will take into the PO screen directly in the view only mode to see the details on the purchase order. Next, I clicked on the link. This will take me to the PO. This is our purchase order in view only mode. We can see all the details of this PO, including the header tab, the supplier, the TNCs or terms and conditions, and then the line information for supply fulfillment. Coming back again to the supply lines. Now we were in the execution documents earlier. Now I'm in the orchestration plan, which I said earlier is a workflow in order for the line to flow to meet the demand on what tasks it can execute. So in this case, it shows a manufacturing work order that has been successfully created, and we see that the details that have been executed in the steps. So we have completed a PR process, we have completed the PO process. Now it's sitting on the work order closure to create the final supplies. We looked at the execution document on the previous screen. If we look at the other tabs, so it would be buy, then it will show all the buy orders which are associated. Again, if we click there, we would see our PO and requisition information. The transfer tab would show the details of any orders which are internal orders or material transfers which are associated to create supply lines, and so on. And it also displays like a Gantt chart and all this fancy information. So this completes our overview of 360-degree view of supply chain orders and the supply chain orchestration work area. Next, we will summarize our today's webinar and what we learned so far. And Dawn is going to do that for you. Dawn, over to you.
Thanks, Raul. So to summarize what we've presented today, with the complexities in the fulfillment processes today, we're driven to optimize all channels in order to reduce the cost to stay competitive and provide prompt delivery times, thereby satisfying customer requirements. Advanced fulfillment processes can decrease the errors encountered, increasing the customer satisfaction, revenue, and margins while reducing the time to market. We reviewed some of the advanced fulfillment techniques that can be leveraged to utilize all of the channels available in complex fulfillment processing, provided some insight into the supply chain orchestration overview. 360-degree visibility leverages automated rules to monitor and make necessary adjustments despite a complex fulfillment process. The automated change management allows better flexibility and reactions to pivot the supply meeting demands. Supply chain orchestration can track and manage the supply from inception to fulfillment of the demand. I hope we've provided some useful information, and so next step, we would like to offer a complimentary assessment of your supply chain processes to assist your organization in identifying any challenges that could benefit from supply chain orchestration. With all of that being said, feel free to reach out to NexInfo for a complimentary assessment of the supply chain process and utilizing supply chain orchestration. So this concludes our presentation. And Emily?
All right, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and we do have a few questions in the chat here that I'm going to go ahead and post. So starting with question 1, can we update, or excuse me, that's the next one. The first question, is supply orchestration part of supply planning in cloud?
No, it's part of the order management suite in cloud. I mean, it interacts with the supply chain cloud, but if you see licensing, it's part of the order management advanced fulfillment processes.
All right, and the follow-up question for that is, can we update these changes from supply orchestration to OM reflect the latest promise date?
That's correct. So you have one more component in place, which is called GOP. So, but then essentially what you're saying is correct. So it can update the promise automatically depending on the rules you set up.
All right. Next question, outside of the ERP, what other systems or inputs are being utilized to assist with demand and supply requirements for external sources?
Yes, so in one of the screenshots, we show that it integrates with all the planning applications, all the internal Fusion applications, such as Planning Central, Supply Planning Cloud, Order Management, GOP, min-max planning, all the inventory planning methods. But on top of that, you can also create spreadsheet uploads. It provides flexibility for you to create the spreadsheet uploads to load your supplies. So you can use that functionality if you have supplies coming in from other sources.
All right, thank you. Our next question, is it possible to see a live demo? What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's possible. Please reach out to our team and then email us, as you can see from the screen, let's talk at nexinfo.com, and I'll be more than happy to spend some time with your organization and give you a live demo of the capabilities.
Great. Question 5, what are the prerequisites for GOP?
Prerequisites for GOP. So, I mean, there are a lot of things. So you need to see GOP depends on your setup. So you need to have all those lead times. You need to have your customers, everything set up. So it's I mean, there's no specific process. You need to turn on that module, but then you will need to run your data collections. So it's a little bit out of scope for this topic, but there are a lot of things you need to set up in order for GOP to work.
All right, thank you for that. Someone did ask for the follow-up email, which is up on the screen, and I will go ahead and add that Raul and Don do have OSM profiles, and you can find them in our membership directory and be able to access them through that as well. All right, we do have questions still rolling in. Question 6, do we have supply orchestration in R12, any latest version?
No, as far as I know, this supply chain orchestration is part of the Fusion Cloud process. It's not a part of the EBS, if that's the question.
Okay. So spreadsheet imports was the only other source for inputs, or were integrations with other external sources used?
There might be some APIs or web services, but I need to get back on that. I don't know the exact name of the web services, but there should be some web services which we can load the supplies.
All right. Next question, are the changes to set the automatic something that can be completed in bulk actions, or does it have to be completed on a supplier by supplier basis?
No, it doesn't. But so the entity here is a supply order, okay? So that's the goal of it. Because the supply order is, so what does supply chain orchestration does is it tries to create one supply order to match the requests coming from different demands, okay? And those supply order lines tie back to the individual line. So if on, say, one line in the supply order, there are, like, say, 5 lines for one supplier, what it will do is the supplier updates those 5 lines, and then we get those changes those will be reflected immediately as bulk on the order management side. But if it's only change in supply, if it's change in PO only, so then it has something external to the SCO. Why? Because if the supply changes the quantity or changes the delivery date on the PO, it is handled by the supplier portal itself, so that those changes are different PO, and once those are accepted change work orders, change order workflows, then this gets reflected on the SCO and in turn get reflected on order management.
Okay, thank you, Raul. We are getting to the end of the hour, so I will go ahead and add in this last question. So this can work in hybrid environments between Oracle, EBS, R12, and Fusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it will be an overkill in my mind. So because what you're essentially doing is managing your orders. So yes, so you have to integrate. So if you are using the EBS to only get supply information and your order management is managed in Fusion, then it might work. But if both are managed, if your order management as well as your procurement, everything is EBS, this would be an overkill.
Okay, thank you again, Raul, for answering all those questions, as well as Dawn. You guys both had a wonderful presentation. Lots of great questions. So thanks to our audience for the participation. Again, you can follow up with them anytime. Everything, the recording slide deck will be in the knowledge base within 24 hours. And please stay online to complete the survey. Your feedback really matters to us. We'd appreciate that. And with that, I don't see any other questions. So that does conclude today's webinar. Thank you, and everyone have a great rest of your day.